Yeah, this war seems to be all offense and very little defense. And it makes me wonder, there's this talk about, the Achilles heel of the US is its lack of interceptors. But I don't even know if that's so much the issue because the interceptors don't seem to be able to intercept a lot of these missiles. I've seen videos, and these have been verified, of where there's been like 8, 9, 10 interceptors fired at one incoming Iranian ballistic missile, and none of them hit it. We're talking that's just that in itself just means like, okay, if you're in this war, let's don't invest in defense because it's way too expensive and the success rate is so low. You just got to go all offense. And I think Iran kind of understands that. I mean, we're always wondering, what is Iran's air defense system? Are they going to be set it up? We're hearing about China is providing something, Russia's providing something. But to cover a landmass the size of Iran seems to be very, very difficult. I'm not even sure. Are U.S. and Israeli aircraft just flying openly over the Tehran, or are they firing from Iraqi airspace and turning around?
I believe it's the latter, and that was true in the 12-day war. There were claims that they had actually that they were ruling the skies, but they never provided any evidence of it. All the images that they provided were clearly taken by drones, and they were not, they apparently. So there was no confirmation of that. So I think we can assume that it was not true, and we're finding the same thing. There's claims that they have kind of completely wiped out, Iran's air defenses, but we're not seeing that. I think they are doing, the strikes are standoff strikes from like Iraqi airspace, as you say, and also by drones. But some of those drones, a number of them have already been shot down. That's something that we saw, of course, in the case of Yemen.
So these strikes.
Last year.
But these strikes that are being carried out on, you saying, civilian infrastructure and hospitals and things like this in Iran, these are being done from things shot from like F-35s, F-22s, all different Iraqi airspace? Or if you're doing severe damage like that, usually it would be some type of a bombing mission, right? Like a printer's going crazy.
Well, I think in some cases they're probably Tomahawk missiles fired from the ships, but other times they are, air-to-ground missiles fired from the aircraft. Now, you're talking about the inadequacy of air defense, and I think that's true for certain kinds of missiles, right? The Iranians do have some missiles that seem to be, are able to easily penetrate air defenses, including Israel's air defense. But not all of their missiles are like that. Their most advanced missiles can do that. But maybe older missiles, drones or whatever, they're all vulnerable to air defense. The one thing that is most vulnerable to air defense is aircraft. And that's why, even though, Iran does not have much of an air defense network, they still have enough that U.S. and Israeli aircraft are very reluctant to actually enter Iranian airspace, because again, that's something that air defense is very effective again, and we saw it. Well, no, actually, maybe it wasn't air defense. There were the 3 F-15s that were shot down over Kuwait. The Iranians say they did it. The U.S. says no, it was friendly fire. The first reports was that it was air defense, and then later they said it was actually a Kuwaiti plane that did it, a Kuwaiti fighter. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't know what actually happened. It's a little bit hard to believe that they actually shot down 3, and over a period of time. And Kuwait, borders Iran, so it would have been very easy for Iranian air defense to take those out. But we don't really know what happened.
Yeah, and I understand that these PAC-2 or PAC-3 should be good at intercepting slower moving ballistic missiles or drones, but we're seeing videos of, for example, that billion-dollar plus radar station in Qatar. It was hit by a slow-moving drone. We saw it. You could hear it.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing's gone. Like this, and he said there's only 6 of these in the whole world. This is something that needs to be guarded very well. But this is an important radar installation, one of the most important radar installations for the U.S. military. It's taken out with a cheap drone. It wasn't a hypersonic ballistic missile. So that tells you something, right? That we clearly don't have the ability to defend our assets. We are seeing Israel get hit. Everybody's getting hit.
Yeah.
Something like every base in the region has been hit. It seems like 18 countries, territories, and nobody's getting spared from this. And this has to be devastating to the United States. The whole point of having American protection and allowing an American base in here, allowing the empire into your country, was the idea that these guys are almighty. They will protect us. They'll keep us safe. They're not doing it. It's the opposite. It's like, okay, why? Wait a second. You guys, America, you're getting scared off with $100,000 worth of drones. You know, we're pumping in billions and billions of dollars into your Patriot system, into the THAAD, or to these early rating installations. And you're saying that they can be taken out with a 50K drone? Like it's over, right? For everybody around the world, anybody that is hosting an American base has to be making that calculation. Like, wait, why are they here? What do they do exactly? How is this going to happen? You know, people, the South Koreans probably have to be asking that, you know. Kim Jong-un is probably looking like, hey, you know, if I wanted to take South Korea, I probably could pretty easily, right? Now all of a sudden these bases have become the illusion of protection and power that they used to present is shattered.
Yeah, and actually, I am reminded of Ukraine. There's an obvious parallel. I think it's the same kind of calculation that the leadership in Kiev made: is we bring the Americans in, and then we're safe. And of course, the opposite is what happened. By bringing in the Americans, you made yourself a target. You say, well, okay, now we're a target, but of course the Americans are invincible, or the West in general. They will protect us. And they may obviously have made a real effort in Ukraine, but they've failed to do so. Now, in these Gulf states, it's even worse for them. They're finding out very, very quickly that this bargain that they made, they figured like, oh, we give up a little bit of our sovereignty and we get the security, right? And then when push comes to when the war actually breaks out and they find themselves under attack, it turns out that, well, first of all, yeah, these air defense systems weren't exactly what they were made out to be. And then also, what is the U.S.'s first priority? Which country is the U.S. trying to protect above all, to the detriment of these other countries? Where is it allocating most of its defensive resources? And of course, the answer is Israel. And I'm sorry, if they were surprised by that, they were just fools.
Yeah, and another issue I think with the United States is our offensive capability. It is impressive in many ways, but it relies heavily on the aircraft, and it's such a riskier thing. When an aircraft gets shot down, that's a big deal, and it all of a sudden is a huge blow to your military prestige. And there goes $250 million, and then the ability to train a new pilot and all this that goes in. Whereas Iran is able to just fire these ballistic missiles and these drones constantly. And even if you are able to shoot down 10, 20, nobody cares. It's like, okay, it's like shooting, it's just a bullet. They'll reload another one. It's not a big issue, where it's a political military nightmare for them whenever these planes get shot down. So we just don't have America does not have the tools for this type of war, for a 21st century war. And it just seems hard to, it's actually, it makes sense if you understand. It's just like America, all these generals are like, oh man, if it was just 20 years ago, we would show them we're so good. We have the best, our Bradleys, our Abram tanks, our aircraft carriers. Like, oh man, if this was back in the 80s, we would, but it's not. And it turns out like, if you did not make the right investment in drones and ballistic missiles, then none of this matters anymore. It's like that's what I'm reading, how I'm reading it. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, a bit of hyperbole, but for the most part, I think that's the case. But we're even seeing in Ukraine as well. Like, what is really keeping the Ukrainians in the fight? It's just the drones more than anything, and that's not coming from the Americans. With the Americans, a lot of people I'm sure this war will affect Ukraine and their support, but I don't think it's going to affect it as much as a lot of people think, because really the main assets that we are giving to the Ukrainians is intelligence, and that in terms we don't have scarcity in that field, and their drones are self-produced in Ukraine. So for that, I think it doesn't change the balance so much. But here in this war in Iran, we just don't have the tools.
Yeah. Again, we do have the ability to inflict a lot of harm on Iran. The question is, do we actually inflict the harm where it counts, as far as the outcome of the war goes? And it's not clear at all that we do. Yeah, I think it is. It's a tortoise and the hare kind of situation that we're looking at here. And, again, in 5 days, the U.S. and Israel's killed 1,000 people. It's destroyed hospitals, it's destroyed government buildings, it's, assassinated leaders. And, and of course, it's done some damage to their military. I think the greatest damage has been done to their Navy. But I actually don't find that surprising, because we've talked about that, how navies in a way are something, kind of the part of the military of the past. They are just much more vulnerable these days than they once were. But that does hurt them somewhat. But they obviously, by losing a Navy, let's just assume that they've lost their entire Navy, save their submarines, right? That does not really affect their ability, again, probably most importantly, to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz and the land both to the west and the east of it, along the coast of the Gulf of Oman and the coast of the Gulf of Persia, that's all Iranian. And they have countless, they don't even need missiles. They don't need long-range missiles. They don't need very sophisticated missiles, because it's just, they're right there. And so just with short-range missiles and drones, not to mention the possibility of mines, they can shut down that strait. So, okay, yeah, maybe they've taken out their Navy. Maybe they've done some damage to their missile arsenal. We just don't know about that. But there's so much. In fact, let's even say that they just take out eventually, just through a combination of the Iranians just using up the stockpiles they have, and other stockpiles being destroyed by the Americans and the Israelis. They run out of ballistic missiles. Okay, that would be, that would obviously affect their ability to inflict harm on the other side. But everybody admits that they have almost unlimited number of drones, and they can produce them like 100 a day or something, and they can just continue to pummel those Gulf states that are so close to them. And then eventually, it's just like, maybe they'll eventually run out of those long range ballistic missiles. But at the same time, Israel and the U.S. will run out of its ability to defend itself. It'll use up its air defense interceptors, and then the drones and the slow moving missiles come into play. The cruise missiles, that they certainly have subsonic and other lower end cruise missiles. And if you don't have any air defense, with air defense, it's actually pretty good against those things. But if you fired every last interceptor, then they can actually just rely on those let's call them less sophisticated, less advanced strike weapons, and that's virtually unlimited. I mean, apparently, kind of like the Ukrainians, they can produce them themselves, and they are producing them even as we speak. And they, I've heard that they have tens of thousands or 100,000 or something. Who knows? We'll find out.
Yeah, and it seems like some of these slow-moving drones, like I said, are already getting through. I think was it Bahrain, Qatar, a lot of these Gulf states says there will be out of interceptors in a couple of days. Some say a week. So this war of attrition will come to a close pretty quickly in terms of the interceptor field. In terms of offensive capabilities, though, I've heard that the U.S. is also in trouble there. And it seems like where we excel is when we can completely rule the skies, and you can just fly over and you can just drop dumb, cheap bombs all day, every day. That's what we do. That's what we're good at. And that's what Israel does. That's what Israel's been doing in Gaza. And we can see that we have basically unlimited supply of these dumb bombs. The question is going to be, will we get to a point where we're going to try to fly like B-52 bombers over Iran and do this? And if Iran has air defense, which these things I think they can shoot down. And if they don't, then I don't think we have the stockpiles of these, Sidewinder missiles or Tomahawks. I'm sure there's a fair amount, but from my understanding, I think it was Mark Zablota was saying that they're running out of those too. Do
Hmm.
you know the situation on the
Yeah,
offensive capabilities?
right. Well, I think that's what Ted Postal pointed out. Again, he's saying that for a week or two they can inflict a lot of damage, and then yeah, they're going to be out of these missiles at least for some time. It's going to take a while to reload. I don't know how long, and I don't think they can ever kind of reload to the extent, to the degree that they began this war with. That's just not going to happen.